Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Classic Comics. So, I just heard about this story that was posted on Bounding into Comics by John F. Trent earlier today. And as you can see from the headline here, Jon Favreau seemingly confirms The Mandalorian will lead to the sequel trilogy. Now, apparently, Favreau gave an interview to the Writers Guild of America recently. And we'll just go over this interview a little bit right quick. So, in a recent interview with Writers Guild of America, Favreau opened up about the show, how it came about, and his writing process going forward. The interview peels back the curtain on what Favreau had planned from the beginning when he pitched the show to Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy, and how he plans to move the show forward into the future. He explained, I had a pitch for a concept of following the archetypes that influenced George Lucas, whether it was westerns, samurai films, World War II films, space opera, cliffhangers, Flash Gordon. Looking at the films and archetypes that influenced George was a way for us to make a smaller story that would work for the scale of the small screen and get back to basics. My pitch was very simple at first, and Kathleen Kennedy was receptive to the ideas I was presenting. Later in the interview, Favreau was asked about whether the return of Luke Skywalker as seen in Season 2 was always planned out. He answered, no. The story unfolded as I wrote it. The Mandalorian inherits a great deal from existing Star Wars stories, and when I write that, context is always a consideration. Favreau then insinuated that he is indeed taking the sequel trilogy into consideration, saying, it became clear that within the established continuity, certain things were likely to transpire. In a follow-up question, he would be specifically asked if he felt pinned in narratively given the sequel trilogy reveals Luke's future. He replied, we have a tremendous amount of freedom afforded to us because of the gap in time between the films. Dave Filoni and I are in constant discussion regarding how each story choice is impacted by and would impact existing Star Wars material. I would be remiss without pointing out that even before The Mandalorian released, Favreau explained that the show would be exploring the origins of the First Order, which were introduced in the sequel trilogy. He stated, also, what could happen in the 30 years between celebrating the defeat of the Empire and then the First Order? You come in on Episode 7, the First Order are not just starting out, they're pretty far along. So somehow things weren't necessarily managed as well as they could have been if the galaxy ended up in hot water again like that, Favreau added. As the interview progressed, Favreau did credit himself for much of The Mandalorian's writing. You have to be very prolific in this new medium because of so much writing is required when you're putting that many hours on the air. It requires creativity, which is a lot different than the burnishing of one piece of material as you do for theatrical. It's a river of writing, and it's not something where I have a big writing staff. I've taken on a lot of responsibility myself, which isn't to say that it's not a collaborative process, but the actual typing out of it, where the rubber hits the road, ends up falling on your shoulders when you're staring at your computer. Favreau continued, having an understanding of how the story fits into not just our series, but the Star Wars universe. That's something that requires a very collaborative approach. That collaboration is what inspires me to be able to go home and type and write scenes alone. We have found a very interesting, cool balance that's about as fulfilling as anything I've ever worked on in my whole career. Now, again, going forward in this interview, he just talks a lot about the work he did on the show and how he works with others. And then they basically make a comparison here to some of the statements that Rian Johnson made about when he was working on the sequel trilogy, because in both cases, the writers, Favreau and Johnson, have stated there was no big mapped out plan. They're kind of just making it up as they go along, and comparing that to what Rian Johnson said, because Rian Johnson made similar comments about how he made The Last Jedi. 'Cause When discussing the concept art shown at the end of each episode and how it pulls the curtain back on the writing process, Favreau stated, "We also made the choice not to edit out things that didn't make it to air or that changed." So it really shows the writer's notes and this idea of this ongoing pulpy writing process, whereby you're creating the story as you go and people are waiting for the next chapter to come out. He continued, "We think about it as novels or books, but there's something really pure about this back and forth between an audience and storytellers that seems, in a weird way, through technology, to emulate the campfire storytelling. I really like the back and forth with the audience, and I love the back and forth with the artist directors and other people that I'm collaborating with. I'm writing for other directors most of the time, and that's something I've never experienced either." And then he talks about how streaming is different from writing for film, how you get much quicker feedback, and how that quicker feedback affects the telling of the writing of the next story, how you're going to tell the next chapter, so to speak. In this immediate world of streaming where it goes out there and get immediate feedback, it's so different than movies where you could sit in the back of the theater or read reviews. Here, there's a conversation that's flowing around you, and it just depends to what extent you want to bend your ear to that or isolate yourself from it, depending on what will most fully support your creativity. Separating himself from how Lucasfilm employees typically behave, Favreau understands and seemingly respects his audience and says it's something he learned while working for Marvel. He explains, "There's something really cool about putting a small sample of what you're doing out there to your core audience and seeing if they are sparked to it. Because at the end of the day, it's a conversation with that audience, and those fans are who you're speaking to. And if you're doing something that they're not feeling, you're not doing your job right." Okay, so what do we make from this article? Again, so there have been rumors circulating that have been put out, and they've come out from, we've gotten stories of rumors from people on YouTube saying that this is all leading up. The Mandalorian is leading up to the sequel trilogy being retconned. They'll use the Veil of the Force or whatever. But here we have something that contradicts this. And they mentioned in the article that, right even back when The Mandalorian was first announced, Favreau said that it would explore how the First Order came to be, which would again seem to mean that the story in The Mandalorian is going to dovetail right into The Last Jedi. Why am I getting this? Whatever. Okay, so this is, here's my thought on this. Because even if some YouTubers, even some of them who are putting out these rumors, like Lord Doomcock, for example, say that even he has said that Lucasfilm puts out information through rumors, basically to sort of test them out, to see what kind of a reaction there is. And even to, and this isn't an unusual thing. It's not new that studios will put out information through back channels to publications, to journalists. They will sort of put things out as a trial balloon, and they will plant stories in the media to help sell the narrative they want to sell. Now, Lord Doomcock and others have said that this is Filoni and Favreau are working to retcon the sequel trilogy in some way. And my thought on it has been, well, this is nice, but I'll believe that when I see it. And then when you see something like this, where he seems to affirm that he's not really going to make any big departure from the established narrative, i.e., he's probably not going to retcon the sequel trilogy, what are you to believe? I'm thinking that a lot of this belief that the sequel trilogy will be retconned is more kind of wishful thinking on the part of fans, and that this is something that fans want to believe, and so Lucasfilm is letting them believe it, and maybe even putting things out there to suggest this is going to happen as a way to mollify the fan base, to sort of lull them, basically to kind of calm the natives down. where they're not so riled up and so angry, where they want to boycott Star Wars projects and that sort of thing, and put this out there that, oh yeah, we're going to get rid of all that in order to basically get them on board and go, yeah, you can sign up for Disney Plus. You can sign up for Disney Plus. You can support The Mandalorian because we're going to get rid of that stuff you don't like. But are they really? I'll believe it when I see it. And I wonder if parties at Lucasfilm aren't deliberately using certain YouTube personalities to put this stuff out here in a deliberate attempt to sort of mislead the fan base and get them to think things that they want to believe rather than what is really going to happen. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Favreau is just using some misinformation himself. After all, if he did want to retcon the sequel trilogy, and obviously that would get plenty of pushback from Kathleen Kennedy and others at Lucasfilm, so maybe he doesn't want to advertise it, and he wants to try and work towards it in some more subtle way, and him saying these things is just a way to kind of allay the fears of maybe Kathleen Kennedy and the Lucas Story Group and all that. But, I mean, what are we to believe? The words coming out of Favreau's mouth, or maybe rumors coming from other people? Until it happens, it ain't happening, is my opinion. Until this actually happens, it's never going to happen. I'll believe it when I see it. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you found this video informative, please do hit the like button. While you're at it, please sub to the channel and hit the bell for notifications, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.